Russia has responded to the United States' rejection of its demands to resolve the Ukraine crisis. Moscow says it doesn't leave much room for optimism, but remain open to further talks. So joining me live now is the former senior advisor to the US Secretary of Defence, Colonel Douglas Macgregor. Colonel, thanks for your time this morning. I guess the root of the problem here is whether or not Ukraine actually joins NATO. Do you see Ukraine joining NATO anytime soon, perhaps even within this decade?
I think it's doubtful, but that presumes that NATO will last for the decade. I think you have to understand this is not a new problem or a recent problem. Ukraine, as it's currently constructed, has been a problem virtually since the collapse of the Soviet Union. And the biggest problem is that at least a third of its population is Russian, and most of those people live east of the Dnieper River, and that's the area where the Russian military will intervene. And the Ukrainians have not been very tolerant of their Russian citizens. So this is a much larger problem. The second problem, of course, is Ukraine's membership in NATO. That's absolutely unacceptable and always has been to Moscow. It's as if we allowed the Russians or the Chinese to park 100,000 foreign troops on the border with us in Mexico. We wouldn't tolerate it. We wouldn't tolerate it in Canada. The Russians are no different.
So Putin's, it's clear that he's sending a message. Those troops have been there for a long time now. He would surely know that there's a pretty limited chance then of Ukraine actually joining NATO anytime soon. So is it just a message that he is sending? Is it a bit of saber rattling, or do you believe that he has got a serious intention of an invasion or an incursion, however you want to call it?
Well, the problem for the Russians is that we've promised them many things over many years, reaching back to the 1990s. We turned out not to honor those promises. We've breached them, in fact. So I don't think President Putin really trusts very much of what we say, and he has to assume that at any given point in time, Ukraine could become a member, and Ukraine would then become a base from which NATO could potentially undermine, certainly subvert Russia, could even attack it. So this is no longer up for debate. He's going to go in to Ukraine. That's, I think, a virtual certainty.
Yeah, well, looking at the map, Ukraine's surrounded by Russian forces to the north, to the east, to the south. The US has said that there are some 8,500 soldiers that are on heightened alert, that are on standby. I mean, that plus whatever else to the west is not really going to be any match for Russian forces, right? So does the US really want to get involved in this?
No, I certainly do not. I don't think we should involve ourselves in something like this. We could have been an honest broker and tried to help the two sides come to some sort of arrangement, but we did everything we possibly could to cultivate hostility to Russia in Ukraine. And this is the biggest problem that we face. We have this incurably anti-Russian attitude in Washington. It's self-destructive. And I think Putin has already exposed NATO as being largely a paper tiger. It growls a lot, but there's not much bite. So I think he's going to go in. I would say that it could come quite soon.
And how much of this is a message to the West, a sort of flipping the bird, testing the West, particularly following, the calamity of the dying days of the Afghanistan war?
Look, we have weakened ourselves dramatically over the last 20 years by pursuing these utterly self-defeating and pointless interventions in the Middle East and Afghanistan. Trillions of dollars, thousands of lives, killed hundreds of thousands of people, ultimately for nothing. That's our problem. The Russians are acutely sensitive to the fact that we seem to be a power in decline. There's no question about that. And we certainly cannot win a fight on Russia's doorstep. That's just strategically impossible. So I don't think this is a message business at all. I think Putin is serious. He's going to go in. I would look for perhaps 2 February, since that's the anniversary of the fall of Stalingrad, as a pretty good date to intervene.
So there's no way you believe, we've got the so-called Normandy 4 at the moment. They've got talks again in Berlin in 2 weeks. Is there any way that Putin pulls back here? And if so, how does he do it without saving face?
Well, I don't think he's worried so much about saving face. I just don't think he has a great deal of faith in any of these talks. In the meantime, we see a lot of evidence that the Germans, the Croats, Bulgarians, Hungarians, and others are singularly unenthusiastic about our intervention in this matter, and they take a very different view of things. But then again, they're Europeans. They've lived there for 1,000 years. That makes a difference. We haven't.
Colonel Douglas Macgregor, good to have you with us this morning. Thank you so much. I hope to talk to you again soon.
Sure, thank you.